ST-12, clear takeoff, left hand. Takeoff left, this is speed 1. Left land, swim west, copy. Speed 1. Crossing 21. Crossing at 24 is runway.
Hello and welcome to the Blueskies podcast. I'm PR Ganapathy, your host.
ST-70, roger, report type southeast, connection, speed 54, midway, and field selected.
I have the pleasure today of speaking to Air Vice Marshal Sunil Nanodkar. Air Vice Marshal Nanodkar was commissioned into the fighter stream of the Indian Air Force in 1981. He's flown many different types of aircraft, but a lot of his operational experience has been on the Jaguar, various types and versions of the Jaguar in various situations. So we're going to spend some time today just talking to him about that. But he's had a fascinating long career with lots of interesting experiences. He retired in 2017 after 36 years of service. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Gana.
Great, sir. So as we start in this program, sir, I'd just love to back up and hear about your childhood growing up and what were your motivations or inspirations to join the service.
Oh, well, it dates back to, I think, 1971, when the first 747 came into India. And I was fortunate enough to see it being flown in to land at Santa Cruz. We were in Bombay.
Wow.
Since I knew the exact time, I had taken permission to bunk school that day. I was watching it from our terrace. When I saw this huge aircraft coming in for landing, flying right over our house, what attracted my attention was two little tiny aircraft on its wing and flying all the way along. Thereafter, after a while, they just peeled off these two aircraft. Just when I say peeled off, I didn't know that time what it means, but they just vanished from the scene, and this aircraft must have gone and landed.
Right.
Now, I was fortunate to have my maternal uncle in Air India those days working there, and I, was desperate to meet him. I asked him, and when I met him, he first asked me, "So, how was the experience seeing the jumbo jet?" So I said, "I will talk to you about jumbo jet later." But what were these two aircraft flying on the wing of jumbo jet?
Right.
So he said, "Oh, they were the two Nats escorting jumbo all the way from, from the time it entered the Indian skies." Month of December, I was in class 7 then, and I heard these Nats doing all the heroics during the war,
Right.
of 71. So from that time onwards, I was truly fascinated with fighters, and I had decided that one day I'm going to sit in the cockpit and fly and escort these big fellows if required.
Wow.
Joined Air Wing NCC through college and did my C certificate. And I was fortunate enough to get selected for flying in Bombay Flying Club.
Uh-huh.
I flew Piper Super Cubs there.
Oh, wow.
And was fortunate to, get selected through NCC entry into the Air Force.
Right.
And rest is, of course, history.
Wonderful. That is some serious dedication and determination to, of course, first time yourself to watch the jumbo, but then after that to notice the fighters and then go and inquire about it and that sort of thing. Amazing stories. Okay, great. That's just amazing. And which aircraft did you do your basic, advanced?
Yeah, I flew the HT2 in Bidar, and thereafter we went to Air Force Academy where I flew the Kiran Mark 1 and Mark 1A.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thereafter, we got commissioned, fortunate to be selected for fighters, and then flew Iskaras in Hakimpet before.
In Hakimpet. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So that was truly the realization of a long dream in that sense. Any memorable sorties from your time as a cadet, training in the HT2 or in the Kiran or in the Iskra?
Oh, yes. I remember when I joined Bidar and when our flying started, my instructor had just come from FIS after doing the course. He was a Dakota and N-32 pilot, and since he had just joined the Air Force Station Bidar, he had to do his own clearances for instructional.
Right.
But then I was a little, anxious as to why is he not calling us for briefing and not taking us for flying when my other coastmates started flying. And in the meanwhile, we were sitting on the ground, and then my CFI caught me and he said, "Come, let's go at least do your air experience sortie." So I was thrilled, but he said, "Okay, go and strap up." So I strapped up in the HT2, and he came. He took. We started the aircraft, and then I, very sheepishly asked him, "Sir, can I attempt taxi?" So he said, "No, wait. I'll just take you out of the flight line." So I said, "Okay." So then he took me out of the flight line, and then again I said, "Sir, can I take over now?" So looking at my probably enthusiasm, and he said, "Okay, just be very ginger with the brakes." And I said, "Okay, sir." And I started taxiing, and I could taxi that aeroplane pretty easily because I had experience on Piper
Oh,
Super
you
Cub, which
had
was
tailwheel experience from the Cub. I'd forgotten about that. Yes.
exactly. So I taxied out, and then he started talking to me, "Son, you're okay with the taxiing, so continue taxiing." And for the first time, you're doing well. Now, probably because he being a CFI, he must not be remembering everybody's,
Profile.
background and profiles, things like that.
Right.
So then we, of course, went and we did all the ground checks and all, and we were ready to line up. So I asked him, "Sir, can I attempt a takeoff?" So he said, "Oh, well, you've taxied well, so let me see if you can handle her." Lined up, and I was quite reasonably comfortable, though HT2 and Piper Super Car, HT2 was a real beast. But somehow because of that 35, 36 hours of experience on Piper with tail wheel getting up, and mind you, Piper Super Cub has a stick. So that's
Correct.
another advantage
That's
that I
another
had.
advantage. Yeah.
HT2 having a stick and not the yoke.
Yeah.
So I had a huge advantage there. So I pushed the nose down a little bit, tail wheel came up, and we got airborne, and it sort of trimmed it okay.
Right.
So thereafter he kept talking to me, and we were flying, and then he of course took over controls and showed me the local flying because that was important as far as that sortie was concerned.
Right.
Then we did a little bit of maneuvering where I also was having controls and things like that. Then something came to his mind because he saw me very comfortable in the cockpit. So he says, "Okay, I will show you some monkey tricks in the aircraft." And then he, started doing arrows.
Oh,
Now,
my.
Piper didn't do arrows. We used to do up to spin,
Right.
but not beyond that. But he started doing arrows. Then that was something which was absolutely fascinating.
Right.
For the first sortie, when I was doing actually it was an air recce kind of a sortie where he was supposed to show you just the ground features and all in and around the airfield and give you a first feel of the air as
Right.
such.
Right.
And here I was very happily watching him do aerobatics, and I was really fascinated.
Yeah.
So we came down and he asked, "Son, you're very comfortable in the cockpit. I'm very glad. I don't think you need to wait for your instructor. We'll do a couple of more sorties together. Okay,
Amazing.
so go and relax." So I said, "Sir, how about debrief?" He said, No, damn it. You're very comfortable. That is what is required in the first sortie.
Wow.
So you just go and relax, have a cup of coffee, and then we'll fly your second trip tomorrow. It was a huge advantage for me, and that came in handy on my first sortie itself on HPT. Otherwise, of course, later on as a QFI, I realized what a beast that aeroplane was when you had to really do things to show to the pupil instructors
Right.
as to what is required to be done to teach ab initio cadets.
Right. Wonderful, sir. And how is the Kiran? How was the experience flying the Kiran, transitioning to a jet? And
Yeah, Kiran, of course, we were all looking forward to getting onto the jets. And, first time in my life, I sat in a cockpit which was so silent in the air.
ah,
so beautiful feeling that everything, the world around you is so silent, and particularly when you did your first solo, because otherwise till then that propeller was rotating in front of you. It was doing all that futter futter futter,
Yeah.
and those sound, and some fumes go by the open windshield, and that smell. Whereas here it was calm and quiet. So quickly you got off the air and went to the height that you were supposed to go to. In that first solo was amazing experience on Kiran, and that is time one realized that what really it is to be alone in the air, and that was prelude to your sitting in a single seat cockpit subsequently in fighters. So
Right.
Kiran experience was amazing.
Wow. And Iskras, you did the jet conversion, and then after that, some operational fighter conversion, right?
After commissioning, we were trifurcated, and we went on to Iskra. Our course was pretty big, so large number, and ours was a golden jubilee course.
Ah.
Our commandant had decided that nobody will fail. I can make a monkey also a pilot.
Oh my goodness.
He stuck to his philosophy, and he passed out every one of us who came to AFA. But then when we went as a big chunk to Hakimpet, then the hack started. Right from the word go, people started bouncing, and we were select few on Iskras, and remaining guys flew the Kirans. And Iskras getting onto back onto the tandem seating was good fun, because you didn't have to see the face of the instructor when you're goofing it up.
Right.
But Iskra was a fantastic aircraft. Again, one of its kind as far as trainer is concerned. So beautiful to maneuver, so easy to fly, and it gave you that real feel of fighter. 20 of us, the lot which flew Iskra, who did well in the course, they were sent directly onto the MiG-21s. The remaining course mates flew the Hunters and joined the MiG-21s 6 months later.
Oh, and what sort of things do you do in that phase? Do you do guns firing? Do you fire rockets, drop bombs?
Yeah, in fighter training wing, they quickly, after doing the initial conversion, they quickly got us onto the tactical flying. So we did 2 aircraft tactical, then 4 aircraft tactical flying at medium level, then graduating to low levels, and then we did tail chase on that aeroplane there, which was one of the very demanding exercise in that phase. And then, of course, we did complete range phase. So we fired 7.62 mm and 23 mm. 7.62, of course, was on Kirans, and 23 mm guns on Iskras. And then we dropped practice bombs and fired 57 mm rocket projectiles.
Wow.
So the complete gamut of air to ground we did. That, of course, we were taken to Jamnagar to fly there because of the range proximity there.
Right.
So it was an experience of doing long cross country to Jamnagar and operating from a foreign base.
Right.
So this is all part of training to a fighter pilot. Ferry one's aircraft from place A to place B on your own, and operate from there on a detachment.
And so you went straight to MiG-21 after that, is it?
That's right.
Which squadron, or what, you went to MOF2? Or?
No, that time there was no MOF2 as such. We went initially to 47 Squadron, but then quickly we were shifted to 8, 28 and 30 Squadron in Tezpur.
Tezpur, right.
But I did my MiG conversion in 8 Squadron, the Pursuits.
The Pursuits, yeah. My dad's first squadron, in fact. And so, tell me about the MiG. So, what was that like?
Oh, MiG-21 was a thrilling experience, truly. And, the speed really hit us hard, because till then it was all honky-dory. And suddenly you find that you're rotating at 300 plus kilometers. And, by the time you realize you're gone past 600 kilometers, and then you're climbing, doing all the maneuvers at 800 kilometers, it was something that was not really expected. Worst part was, by the time you were blinking your eyelids, your fuel is over, and you're, you have to get back. So that was a real hard-hitting fact, which the earlier, of course, we realized, the better it was that time. That is what. Then we realized what is what real fighter flying is all about, and what really time means to you in the air, because one had to grasp everything quickly, understand it, and deliver it back as a performance there.
Right.
That told you that if you're sitting in a fighter cockpit, there is no time to think twice. So whatever you had to do it first time and do it right. That is what our instructor used to say on the ground. And of course, the way the emergencies and all used to be handled, the ways that seriousness came about, react emergencies, because we realized that there is no time in the cockpit to even forget about blinking an eyelid, not even a thought crossing your mind, which is at variance with what you were supposed to do. And that too in a place like Tezpur and Chabua, where jungles are around, hardly any ground features because of the vegetation, and now to see things, navigate, and it was amazing, demanding.
This was the first aircraft you flew that was capable of going supersonic. Do you remember the first time you broke the sound barrier, and what was that feeling like?
Okay, frankly speaking, I was expecting a lot to happen.
Okay.
One was briefed on the ground that what you expect actually happens to the people on the ground.
Right.
And you don't get to hear all that bang of the shockwave breaking and all that. So
Right.
don't expect anything much in the cockpit, but focus on how the speed jumps and how the pressure instruments jump.
Right.
That is an indication that you've gone supersonic. And thereafter, how the handling of the aircraft changes. Except for the flying characteristic changes and the pressure instruments showing you that you've gone supersonic, not much happened. But then one realizes the speed at which you're covering the ground, because you're observing how fast the ground is going past you. That is something that really is amazing.
And what happens in control? What are the controls feel like after you cross the Mach 1?
See, as long as the artificial feel is there on the controls, they try to give you as much as comfort as possible. So, but otherwise, the transonic to supersonic, the controls get a little heavier, and the aircraft maneuvering becomes a little sort of sluggish. You have to, be careful if you want to sustain supersonic flight.
Right.
And of course, aircraft maneuverability is a little lesser, so you have to be careful in what you're doing. Otherwise, you will stress the aircraft more. So all these things happen once you go supersonic.
Right. And how fast have you had it? Capable of what, 2.2 Mach, I think. And what's the fastest you've been at?
So I have been up to 1.6, 1.7 Mach, not beyond that.
And how high have you got it up to? What altitude?
I've been up to 13 kilometers.
13 kilometers.
That is the maximum. That's right.
Did you have to wear a pressure suit for that altitude?
Yes. We had to wear a pressure suit, and that itself was a challenge. Flying, getting into the pressure suit, getting into the cockpit of MiG-21, and flying the aircraft.
Wow.
So that was one amazing experience.
Right. And so then after, so you were fully ops in the MiG-21 by the time you were transferred to the Jaguar?
Yes. I was fully ops on MiG-21 in 101 Squadron. Subsequently, I joined 101 Squadron in Sirsa.
Oh, nice.
And and then shifted to Jaguars in 14 Squadron.
Okay, in Ambala.
Which was the first Jaguar Squadron in Ambala. That's
right. Yeah. And did you volunteer for it, or were you just detailed, and how was that selection process?
I mean, there was no volunteering for anything, but of course in our annual report, one would ask as to what would you like to do next. So those days, there were two fascinating aircraft which were available in the Indian Air Force. One was Jaguar and other was Mirage 2000.
Okay.
So every time we would write that we want to fly one of these next. One fine morning, I got my posting on Jaguars.
Right. Okay. How many hours did you have in the MiG-21 when you converted?
Yeah, I had about close to 350 hours when we shifted to Jaguars.
Okay.
Visual before just need 70, Roger, report IP southeast, connection for the midway, and field selected.
Yeah, what was your first encounter with the Jaguar like? What was that conversion like? And one question that I've had is, the Jaguars are, it's a very specialized aircraft for that deep penetration strike role, whereas the MiG-21 is used for both air defense as well as for ground attack. And Is there something that the Air Force was looking for in pilots that made them handpick particular people for the Jaguar? Are there particular skills, attitudes, capabilities that they were looking for?
There was some kind of criteria laid out to select people for Jaguars then. When we got selected and when we went there, we didn't know what the criteria was, but skills, of course, must be the first criteria because it was an advanced aircraft. It was one of the most challenging cockpits, which, of course, I realized much later that,
Right.
because initially you don't get to discern all these things when you're just focused on establishing yourself. And it was a huge jump from in terms of technology, also from going from MiG-21 to Jaguars. Secondly, you're moving from single engine to twin engine,
Right.
so managing that itself was one of the things. But as far as your quality of pilots is concerned, I presume that one must be the skill level. Second must be your performance in various aspects of air to ground weapon delivery that you did on MiG-21, and or any other platform from where people came onto Jaguars.
Right.
Mostly, all of us were from MiG-21 background because that was the platform generally was available for operationalizing.
And so, what was it like to fly the Jaguar, and how was it different from the MiG-21? And I know the missions would have been quite different because of the low-level strike and things like that. But just love to hear your experiences flying the basic version of the Jaguar, and then we'll come to. I know you have lots of experience also in the upgraded Daring versions and the Maritime version, and so on and so forth.
See, when you say basic version, actually, I will call it that was the most advanced version in negative sense.
Right.
In the sense,
Most
I will,
demanding. Huh?
first of all, see, going from MiG-21 to Jaguars, technologically, we were jumping in terms of avionics and, engine performance. Visibility itself, when you sat in the cockpit, was amazing. I mean, one couldn't imagine that from a fighter cockpit, one could see so much.
Ah.
So first time when we sat in the simulator itself, it was different. Jaguar training was entirely different. You had to do certain exercises on simulator. They were well supervised, and then you graduated onto the actual aircraft.
Right.
So simulator itself was a very amusing experience, and of course the Jaguar cockpit is so well laid out as far as pilot's comfort goes. What was challenging was these avionics that you had in the cockpit, like the Navwez Jaguar, which was the basic Jaguar that came first. That had the gyro-based platforms, and the gyros drift, and because of the drift, that those gyros would feed everything to the other avionics. So one had to manage those systems. Then you had the radar warning receiver, which was very advanced those days. Then you had the laser in front to carry out laser designated attacks. And of course, the fuel system of Jaguar is, those days we used to feel it is so complicated as compared to MiG-21. One had to really manage the fuels. As long as the automatics worked, it was beautiful. But if you had to get into manual management, then it was a little challenging task. So all that single cockpit pilot had to do. Then one of the very critical areas in MiG-21, as long as the engine was running, we never bothered about maneuvering and power and all. She was so forgiving, other than close to the ground at low speeds.
Right.
But otherwise, this aircraft was so different to handle because it was very optimally, balanced for low level flying. Fuel consumption was very, very less as compared to other Russian aircraft that we were used to.
Right.
So it was all optimized for the performance that we got from that platform. So to get used to that was a huge demand on us in Jaguars. So initially getting used to the head-up display was itself a big challenge.
Oh, right. Yes.
Because one was not used to head-up display, and the information available on head-up display, one would search for a head-down display which you are used to it.
Right.
Now, just for your people listening, head-up and head-down displays are a duplication done to keep the fighter pilot's head outside the cockpit as much as possible to look for enemy. So your basic parameters are available on the glass in front. So that is called head-up display, and we were not used to. So then, of course, later on during the conversion, we were taught how to fly on single engine. That was one of the critical parts as far as maneuvering and recovering the aircraft on single engine was concerned, particularly when the aircraft was heavy. So these are few things on Jaguars that one had to go through.
Right.
But then once we got used to the platform and once we got used to taking her down to low levels, I don't think there is any other platform in the world which can fly so steady and deliver so accurately than Jaguar.
So, were you doing mock strikes on other air bases regularly to both test your skills as well as test their air defense skills? And if so, can you remember any
Very rare.
memorable sorties where you got in and out without anybody picking you up?
Yeah. Jaguar pilots' ego lied there. When you really got down low without many radars detecting you, you challenge the radar. Those days, of course, the radars were not as good as what they are now. But then you challenge the radars by going as low as possible. And of course, there were restrictions as to how low you can go. But then one could sustain there all throughout the final run-in to your target airfields. That was the key to success. And the camouflage of the Jaguar is so good that in Punjab, Haryana, that sector, to pick up a Jaguar, incoming Jaguar visually was really very, very challenging task. And I remember we used to regularly go and strike air bases at Adampur and Srinagar and all. I think 7 out of 10 times we were, not detected till last. And invariably, people used to get after us when we were getting away after doing our job.
Right.
It used to be good fun, but very, very demanding, very challenging.
Because you were what, 200 feet off the ground at that point?
Yeah, officially.
I won't ask you anymore, sir. Especially at night, how do you navigate effectively? And of course, I think you did have the moving map and things like that, but it just seems quite incredible how you navigate that low and that fast.
Yeah, the challenge was, of course, navigation. Particularly, we had this extended low-flying area allotted to us, which was bordering Haryana and Rajasthan, and you went into desert sector then. Particularly there, it was a huge challenge navigating at night. But yes, when you compare to MiG-21, you had the moving map display available to you, so you had your situational awareness being provided by these gadgets. But then the bad part was that you had to manage those gadgets well, because at times they took you for a ride. When the gyros drifted, and if you didn't catch them in time, they would take you for a real ride. And that is what happened to people who have got lost in even a Jaguar or any other advanced aircraft, that they have not managed their systems well.
Right.
So that used to be the challenge. But yes, if the systems were with you and you were managing them well, it was a piece of cake to navigate. But then to navigate at low level with all these systems, these lights flashing all in the cockpit, and looking outside, doing your job on a dark night at low altitudes. And in ELTA, mind you, in during daytime we could go down in our attack phases to 100 feet.
Wow.
Imagine flying at 480 knots. That's around 900 plus kilometers at 100 feet at low levels.
Fascinating. My goodness.
Good fun. Good fun.
And you also saw some maritime action at that time?
Because see, what happened was I did my day ops on Jaguars, and I was posted to form the Maritime Squadron itself, Jaguar Maritime Squadron.
Oh, wow.
Along with stalwarts like then Group Captain Mike McMahon. He was designated as CO then, and I was first pilot to go and take over the Maritime Jaguar with him.
Right.
From HAL. And these Maritime Jaguars were Daring Jaguars, which were already inducted into the Air Force, and they had put the maritime radar in that. And this entire upgrade was done by one fantastic team of pilots led by stalwarts like then Group Captain Ajit Apte and R.K. Sharma and
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to fly the Maritime Jaguar and form the maritime element of 6 Squadron, the Dragons.
Visual, visual, we're on before your approach landing. Just 70, roger, report diving southeast, connection, speed 4, midway, and view selected.
So tell us about maritime operations in the Jaguar. What's that like? And what are some of the missions you used to do against with the Navy or against the Navy as practice?
Each and every fighter pilot must go through that experience of flying over sea, and particularly flying over sea on a dark night. Dark night means there is no moonlight.
No moonlight, right?
So there is no reference available to you. Once you go, say, about 50 nautical miles from the coast, then there are no lights because the trawlers and all which are fishing or merchant ships, they're all gone. So there are no lights. So it's nice, one black bowl that you're flying. And if you fly at low level and fly well and deliver your weapons accurately, I think, and navigate over sea, that is something that each and every fighter pilot must go through just to experience.
Right. And just for the audience, it's not like you have an autopilot in this. You're hand flying completely, isn't it?
Absolutely. Jaguar did not have an autopilot then. It has some kind of autopilot now. We have modified them. But those days we didn't have autopilot. So whatever 1.5 hours plus sortie you did to hunt for ships in ocean where they were exercising. And in peacetime, you always, have a blue navy and a red navy, and you are part of one of them, and then you're striking the other ships. And mind you, the ships don't keep their lights on. You had to pick them up on your radar. So you have to do head down radar work.
My goodness.
Radar scope was down in your instrument panel, and at times it used to show up on the head-up display, but that was a little distracting. So most of us used to do a little bit of time sharing between head-up and head-down flying. To do all these things at low level and fly that aircraft continuously, maintaining accuracy of height, speed, and direction to reach the target accurately is a huge demand on a human being.
Wow.
I think there can't be more demanding flying than that. I don't think so.
No, it doesn't sound like it's for the weak-hearted at all.
And to add to that, if there is a clouding at low levels, then it is more fun because then by the time you come back from a sortie, I think the best of the pilots had to take out their overalls and get a lot of water out of them in the bucket.
Drenched in sweat, is it?
Absolutely, you're drenched and sweating because naturally you're at your adrenaline it's continuously at such a high level during such sorties. Unknowingly, you're sweating.
Right.
But the more you prepared for this, the more anxious you got during these sorties. So these are very demanding sorties. Maritime, dark night, low level.
So we spoke to Group Captain Akhtar earlier. He spoke about some of the initial development, but from a squadron pilot perspective, what was the difference, advantage, benefit from moving to the Darren Comet system from the Navwez system that you saw?
See, first of all, the basic platform from which all these inputs were, the sensors part of it that you got were much reliable. The technology was a step or two higher technology. Which, mind you, was already inducted in some form in Mirage 2000. But then we made sure that similar, if not better, technology is put on Jaguars. And because of that, the pilot's life, as far as navigation and basic jobs that you did as a pilot during the strike missions, was made much easier because of these modifications. And the displays became better. The sharpness of the display on the head-up was much better. The information available on the head-up was much more, which was highly essential from what it was available on Navas. Navas, of course, was a 70s technology, and Darren platforms and associated avionics that we upgraded. They were of 1980s and 90s technology, and subsequently, of course, we have gone through the upgradation of Darren 2 and Darren 3 now.
Right.
So we have gone much further away from what the Navas Jaguar was in terms of providing cockpit comfort to the pilot for system handling.
Right.
So pilot is much at ease when he thinks about a sortie today, and he can deliver the weapon much more accurately, do a lot of more jobs, so he can handle complicated weapons, and he can also do the self-defense job in a much, much better manner in today's Jaguar.
Okay, right. And, in terms of the weaponry that you would carry on the Jaguar, were there dumb bombs, smart bombs? Did you do any rocket work in the Jaguar at all, or was it not really a good platform for
See,
that sort of stuff?
we did all kinds of weapon, right from 30 cannons to rockets to small caliber bombs to 1,000-pound bombs to laser guided bombs. And now, of course, we have graduated to much more complicated and sophisticated weapons of anything and everything in the inventory of Indian Air Force. A Jaguar can
Can
fire,
deliver.
yeah, can deliver and deliver it well. And secondly, there was an air-to-air missile on top of the wings, which was something unique on that platform, and that also we have now modified to have a much better air-to-air missile.
Fascinating.
So you can think of a weapon, and Jaguar could carry it and deliver it well. Just to draw a simile, Indian Air Force tries out most of its weapons on Jaguars. Whenever we induct any new weapon, we want to try them out. The first platform that comes to anybody's mind is Jaguar.
Right. I was reading about your citation for leading the exercise against the US Air Force. I'd love to hear what that was all about and how you planned it, how you went about it, and how we performed there. I think you took 6 Jaguars and a few IL-76 and a few IL-78 tankers and went there to Alaska. I'd love to hear that entire experience.
Yeah, I had handed over Squadron and come to air headquarters as Director Tactical Operations. And one fine day, my boss told me that, Vice Chief is calling you. And fortunately, that time, Vice Chief was Air Marshal McMahon. He was my ex-CO in 6th Squadron, as I told you.
Yes.
When he called me, he said, "You bloke, I don't know why, but Chief has selected you to lead the exercise at Alaska." First, I couldn't believe that Chief has selected Jaguars to go to Alaska, because this was in 2004 and we already had Su-30Ks on our soil for a little while. Then there were talks that we will send Su-30s for this exercise. And I was stunned. And he says, "So how do you feel?" So I said, "Sir, right now I'm not feeling anything, but I will get some feeling once I go to the office."
Right.
He said, "Why?" I said, "Sir, because I don't know what is supposed to be done." And that was a fact.
Right.
Because imagine first time fighter aircraft were flying out of our country, and that too straight to Alaska. Secondly, we were supposed to take the tankers with us that were just about 1 year old.
Wow.
So they were formulating their, operational procedures, and they were getting used to various situations and exercises. So we were supposed to take them on. And the only experience of Alaska we had was that the previous year, when IL-76 had gone there, but it had not participated in the exercise actively, and it had experienced how the exercise is conducted. That was done by then Group Captain S.R.K. Nair, who had taken his IL-76 and gone. That was the only experience that we had. But flying a transport aircraft, I presume, all the way to Alaska, and taking the fighters all the way to Alaska, two different...
completely different kettle of fish, yeah.
So it took us about, we had about 8-9 months to plan this complete thing. And of course, Americans were also not used to Indians messing around during their exercise. And mind you, there were total 12 nations participating, though all of them were not participating for flying, but about 8 nations were actively participating in flying. And later on, of course, we came to know that mostly these exercises are conducted for NATO forces. So we were the only non-NATO country participating that time. It was a huge challenge trying to plan this exercise, because we did not know how to plan the ferry. Because it's not a simple ferry.
Yeah.
You had to do 2 to 3 mid-air refuelings, which has a different process than just a ferry from point A to point B. So when probably Jaguars came from UK, or the Mirages came from France, they just ferried from place A to place B following the pre-designated routes, and they landed at a airfield, and they refueled and took off and came back. Whereas for air-to-air refueling, you have to have separate corridors, you have to have entirely different planning process that one has to go through. So
Right.
we had to learn that. RAF was very helpful to quickly let us learn those processes. Then our Air Attaché, Air Commodore Murli Sundaram, he helped us out in that.
Okay.
But mind you, whatever we did, we were, because of our enthusiasm and the team that I had to work on this was amazing, because every time we had to learn something new, we were, quickly getting onto the job and staying ahead of what others were doing.
Right.
So, I mean, we wrote our own softwares, and 2004 was not today's world where software writing was as easy. And mind you, this software writing was done by people in the Air Force itself.
And so, what was your route of ferry finally? Did you go via Japan and up the Pacific coast? Or?
No. Those days, because of the constitutional restrictions allowing the foreign air forces to operate from Japan, we were not allowed. We had planned both ways in our initial planning, but then because of this restriction from Japanese government, we had to drop that idea, and we had to go on a western route. So we went from here to Doha, then we went to from Doha we went to Egypt, then Italy, then Portugal, then Azores Island in
The Atlantic.
middle of the ocean there, Atlantic Ocean, and from there to Gander in Canada, then Edmonton, and then Eielson in Alaska.
Wow. And once you got there, you were assigned to one of the two forces, or were you split up, or how was that?
Yes. We were part of the Blue Forces, and there were Canadian F-18s there. There were F-16s, US Air Force X-15s. Then there were Japanese F-15s. There were F-14s from Germany and RAF.
Wow.
Whatever forces were operating from Eielson Air Base in Alaska, they were all part of the Blue Forces, and Red Forces were deployed on some other base in Alaska. So, and the territory is huge. They have got demarcated area for this exercise. They have got automated range there, and it was a wonderful experience. And to participate first time in that environment was something out of the world.
Amazing. Can you tell us about some missions that you all mounted, and who were the opposing forces, and how did you perform? I presume they assigned you low-level strike missions and things like that.
Yeah, we were part of the Blue Force, and one of the few things I'll cover before I come to the mission, that we had a little bit of disadvantage being a non-NATO participant, that some of the equipment that was allocated to NATO's participants, that was not available with us. So we had a little bit of handicap to start with.
For example, what would some of that equipment be?
Yeah, they have monitoring pods.
Oh, right.
Monitoring, and they were data linked to the ground, so real time everything was available. Whereas since we could not carry those pods those days, now of course when we go we carry those pods from them. So our positioning was done based on the radar feed.
Okay.
So there were little complications in all these things, but we overcame that complications very fast, and they were very helpful and very positive in giving us all the support, and just to make sure that we participate in the exercise well.
Correct.
And mind you, one of the best things that happened during the exercise, that whatever missions were allotted to us, there was not a single cancellation of a sortie.
Wow.
That means whatever we flew 100% missions with success. Of course, there were some missions where we were fired at, some of our elements, that means we were not in a position to fully carry out the attack and destroy the target. But the success rate during that time, our success rate was about 60% plus.
Wow.
In terms of reaching the target and destroying the target. So which was for the first time in an environment like that, with limitations that I just specified. It was amazing. It was good. So our pilots did very well. Our tankers flew some sorties during the missions. Again, the success rate of transferring the fuel and tanking was 100%. So performance-wise, we took part in all the missions. Now, coming to specific mission, we always were part of the F-15s, Jaguars, and F-16s would go together for strike in formations. Tornadoes would be, of course, along with the Jaguars. So there used to be huge packages. Trying to RV with everybody, get on with your route, making sure that you have adequate air defense cover, in a BVR environment, which we were operating probably for the first time,
Right.
beyond visual range missile environment, which they were used to and they were practicing for many years. Striking the target and getting back was a challenge. Then there was a mix of going at low level and medium level. Mostly the missions used to go at medium level because then your escorts, F-18s and F-16 escorts, they would take care of you as far as your safety is concerned, your survivability was concerned.
Right.
So that way it was good. But at times they sneak through and, Jaguar being Jaguar, trying to get at quickly at low level and escaping, that happened many a times. And we could, we could win over them in some of those sorties. And that is why our success rate was 60% plus.
Wow.
So that way our pilots and our equipment held our entire lot, because that was important, because we wanted the radar warnings in time so that we could take our tactical actions swiftly. So our entire equipment worked beautifully there. It could be because of the environment also, probably, and our charged up ground technicians, they were working 24/7 to keep the aircraft and systems going. So it was amazing.
Wow.
In fact, I can tell you a story. We changed the engine in Canada outside in rain because we didn't have a cover. So we did some usual Indian Jugaad technology and we changed one Jaguar engine, and that is how we reached all the way to Alaska as planned on time without losing anything. When we went there, we found that RAF people or Germans, when they flew a relatively modern aircraft, they had left behind certain number of aircraft en route. And all 6 Jaguars, both tankers and IL-76, we reached on time, on track.
Wow, amazing. And did they have AVACs in the air? I presume they did, and that didn't pick you up either.
Yes. They had no AVACs picked us up, but both sides had AVACs, so they would warn our pilots that air defense aircraft of Blue Force would go ahead and take them on and shoo them off.
Okay.
So all that was happening in the air. So AVACs were there on both sides. So that was very helpful. And we learned a lot of lessons there because those days we didn't have AVACs. So we some of our pilots went for experience in AVACs. Along with some pilots, we flew in their tankers, and they have got boom and socket kind of refueler. So that we couldn't use it that time because we don't have the system. But we went and flew in the tanker to see how the do that. Everything that was given to us, we experienced it without any shortcomings or failures, and they were very forthcoming to let us do many things that we were wanting to do. So it was a huge learning for our boys, both aircrew as well as the ground crew.
Wow, fascinating. On that really happy note, I want to thank you for your service, and also thank you for spending so much of time with me and going into so many fascinating, lovely experiences in so much detail. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Gana, for having me over, and we must catch up on these things more often.
Most definitely, sir.
Thank you, Gana.
Just 7B, like your report time southeast, contingent for the midway, and you'll select it.
Well, folks, that's all we have time for this week. Join us again next week. In the meantime, sign up for updates at blueskiespodcast.com. There you'll find links to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also write to us with your comments, questions, suggestions, and feedback from the website or to blueskies@prganapati.com. Subscribe to the podcast on any podcasting platform such as Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and even on YouTube. If you like what you heard, share it with your friends, give us a rating in your favorite podcasting app, and write us a review. It will help other people find us. I want to give my thanks to Saurav Chordia for our logo and Prithvik for the music. I want to reiterate that all the views expressed here are personal, and this podcast has not been approved by or reviewed by the Air Force, Ministry of Defense, or any branch of the government. In the meantime, stay safe and Jai Hind.